Welcome to Life Giving Leaders. It is so good to be here with you today. I have been so excited about this interview. This is one I have been wanting to do for a while. We are joined today by Evelyn Silvoso Wallace, who is, I believe, the best in the world at what she does. And we're going to get into what she does in a moment. I'll read you just a quick bio from her website, and then I'm going to share some personal things I know I've experienced from Evelyn. So Evelyn believes that organizations can put together life-changing events, seminars, and projects that help to make the world a better place, developing the team within the organization to enhance their performance through a method that she calls transformational leadership. She's helped organizations customize their strategies in order to bring their projects to life. It's that same strength that makes her an effective leader, project manager, and consultant. And I have to tell you, she doesn't just believe it, she does it. And I have such deep firsthand, just experience of the gem that is Evelyn Silvoso Wallace. I actually got the privilege of working for her and seeing at Transform Our World Canada. So on top of what she's doing with her own consultancy, she has been the Chief Operating Officer for Transform Our World, not Canada, Transform Our World Global, which is an organization that ends systemic issues citywide in many cities all over the world. They've transformed families, individuals. It's absolutely phenomenal. And this has been under Evelyn's leadership as the Chief Operating Officer, and it's just incredible. So I got the privilege to work with her there, and just seeing how she utilized the gifts and what she's going to talk to us about transformational leadership to bring teams together, to make sure each member of the team is honored in their God-given design, that the best of their gifts come out, that they're able to work together in a way that they understand each other, not just understand each other, but even in the way organizational charts were structured for projects, it was done in such a way to make sure that the best of everyone was able to come out. And because of that, the way she does what she does causes organizations to be able to do an unbelievable amount of things, even with small teams, because she really is able to maximize what each person has. And honestly, her teaching about the gifts has also had dramatic effect on mine and Michael's life personally, just individually, causing us to fall in love more with ourselves, understand each other, and just really bring a harmonious, ability to understand what we usually don't understand about each other. And yeah, so there's just so many different things. And I'm going to stop talking because I want you to experience the miracle that is Evelyn Silvoso Wallace. So I'm going to actually ask you, Evelyn, would you explain to someone, because a lot of our audience has heard me jabber on about you and the gifts before. So it's not the first time they've heard about it. But for someone who has never experienced it or doesn't know what this is, how would you, can you just explain to us what we're talking about so we can get into it?
Well, thank you, Dina. It's such a blessing. And what I love is that when I spend time with you and I spend time with Michael, it's just that you believe in the best in people and that God has a redemptive purpose for them. And I feel like that's why the Lord brought us all together and gave us such a unique season for you and I to work together, which was such a blessing. And so, friends, when you look at the gifts, you look at your transformation leadership style, and it really comes from scripture. It comes from the Bible in Romans 12. And you may have heard of it before, but one of the things that is the primary reason I've used it globally is that it really honors God's design of you. That's big picture, what it is like God has designed you, made you, regardless of what has happened in your environment, the way you've been cultured. There are some things that the Lord is so faithful. It's like scripture says he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And we are made in his image. And there's an imprint, there's a design. And Romans 12 gives us a clue of that design about the 7 gifts. And then we look at how 7s are used in scriptures and we see those 7 gifts again. And one of the things that is such a joy is there's a uniqueness to all of us, but there's also certain things that we are passionate about and some challenges that you might have challenges that you face that are different than what I face or Dana faces. But it's interesting because when you start to organize those things, you start to see the patterns. And it's in that you can overcome the challenges that come your way. And that's why we put this together. And that's why Dana and I get so excited about it. We're so passionate about sharing the hope that it brings to all of us.
Yeah. Can you, now I know this might be a tall order to ask, but can you give us just a quick touch point on each gift? Obviously it's not going to be deep enough but just so people have a little bit of an idea of the 7 gifts.
Definitely. So when we look at it, they each have names, and the first one is the gift of prophet. This is somebody that if you have this gift or you run into them, they are black and white in all their outlook in life. They're like, it's either right or wrong. It's good. It's bad. It's if the balance sheet balances or it doesn't. And so that's your gift of prophet, and it's just an amazing design to look at things almost always through a 2-dimensional grid, and there's lightning speed that comes out of that. So that's a little bit about that gift. And then you have your gift of servant. And you have in that gift, you have somebody who, of all the gifts, they move the fastest, the hardest. They have a capacity for large amounts of information and to make it look effortlessly. I'm impressed continually if you have this gift. And then the third one is gift of teacher. These are the individuals opposite of the gift of prophet, where they are very circular. They can hold all the facets of the equation at the same time in their outlook, when they're looking at a problem, when they're looking at a solution, where they're like, oh, there's 12 different options we could make. So that's a little bit about them. Then you have your gift of exhorter, who is a highly experiential, relational individual. And they are somebody who often looks at things and they go, hey, this works out in society. Let's go find out why. And then they go back and they research, why does it work? So very experiential, very relational. They can go wide with an audience. It's very interesting. So, and you've probably guessed it, Dana is an exhorter. And so we also have our gift of, I'm just going to check my list so I don't forget it. Your gift of giver. This is a gift that is fiercely independent. And so they have an incredible capacity to look at things very individualistically, and then also to look at doors of opportunity in systems. So you might feel like, oh, our system, our organization's locked tight. And often they can see the loopholes in your organization because of that capacity to think so independently. And then we have our gift of ruler. These are the individuals who just love to build. They build. Every time you talk to them, they're telling you what they're doing, what they're creating, what they're building. And then the 7th gift is gift of mercy. And this one is harder to pin superficially if you're new to the gifts, because they're almost like a shapeshifter. There's so many things they can do, but it's really when they operate in the art of being that they accomplish so much. And you're like, how did this happen? Like, how are they doing so much? And it's actually in their presence. And when you couple that with the power and presence of God, they usher in God's presence into situations with their act of being. And you can see creativity flow. You can see things get created. And you're like, how is this happening? It's very It's very supernatural now. And
Yeah.
most of the people I know who have gift of mercy, wouldn't you say, Dana, they know there's a supernatural dimension to their gift. And if they stray from that, they're not as satisfied. So that is the 7 in a nutshell. I hope that helps, Dana.
Absolutely. Now, thank you for that. And I do want to make clear to our audience that is that was very, very helpful. But there is so much more. So I just wanted you guys to get a touch point. One of the reasons that I strongly believe that you are the best at this is, I mean, given that these gifts exist in Romans 12, they've been here for a long time. So
Yes.
many people have used them. They've done different tests on them. They've been used in many of the major ministries for decades now. However, you have gotten some further insight on them, which is, you guys might have just heard those gifts and you might say, oh, I'm that one, right? And so yeah, maybe. But God's really unveiled to you that it's not just the one gift that you are, that it's about the top 3. There's also a mechanism of the top 7, how they interact. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Definitely. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Dana. And so, one of the things that the Lord blessed me over the last 25 years at looking at these gifts and their use is just that, initially you can pick out your top 1, but it's really your top 3 you use every day. And your first gift and your third gift end up being like operating systems for you. And it's kind of your go-to gifts. And then your second gift ends up being the one that kind of is your stick shift. It controls, like, are we going to go with number 1 or are we going to go with number 3 in this situation? And a lot of talented leaders who've learned to work in the global community or in a diverse area that's demanding, it's natural for them to be able to talk all 7 gifts. And so you will find occasionally, like, where you might find it a little harder to discover which one you are. Sometimes that's because you're like, oh, well, in this situation, I can talk prophet. In this situation, I can talk teacher.
Right.
And it's just kind of the demands of leadership that you make those adaptations. And the further you are in your career, in your life, that becomes a little bit easier to do. But why come back to your design? The reason is that you can do those other things in short spurts, but your greatest satisfaction is when you honor your God-given design. And it's like scripture tells us, love your neighbor as yourself. This is one of those things where you're like, I love myself. And sometimes I have individuals who I know their institution primarily pulls for gifts that are not my top 3. And I'll go, oh, I'll come in, I'll do something with you, but I'm probably not going to do something long term. And I don't have to find a bad reason or something wrong with them. It's just more about coming back and going, I'm not going to have long-term satisfaction in that situation, but in spurts, I'm happy to be there. And so that's one of the things that as leaders, we might be able to talk a lot, but we can come back and go, why am I having career burnout? Why am I feeling stuck? If you look at it, it almost always comes back that you've committed yourself to a situation that forces you to operate outside those top 3.
That's amazing. And it reminds me of something when we were talking Monday about when people are put into those situations, sometimes they can reject themselves. Can you explain a bit about that and how the gifts help you to really fall in love with yourself and honor yourself?
I'm so glad you also brought that up, Dana, because it is about loving yourself. And appreciating and standing back in the vast of like, wow, God did something really great here, very complex and good. So back to your question, Dana, you were saying like specifically what you're wanting is kind of explain that again.
So you were talking about, maybe this is not what you were talking about, but because I've had so many conversations with you and I'm very gray, so my mind went all over. But the thing that I was gathering is I know where someone could be fit in a team where maybe their gift is not, aligned with the team, or even in a family. Like maybe you're got a prophet parent and you're just not, you know what I mean? And so in those situations, parts of you is constantly rejected. because it humiliates,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
so you can feel like, I hate that part of myself, or that's wrong, you know?
Yeah.
But when you learn about the gifts, and um it shifts that. So you're able to like fall in love with what you are, who you are, and you're also so good at, you talk about the superpower of each gift, you know, and
Mhm.
just how you can actually overcome different challenges that the gift would have. You know what I mean? So, you know, not
Yeah.
only do you fall in love with yourself, but you also give people the tools or the superpower to deal with the situation, you know? So
Yes.
I just said a mouthful, but any of those things you want to jump in on, please go ahead.
Okay, I got it. That was good.
Yeah.
That was a great clarification. And
Okay.
so, one of the things that you touched on, Dana, which is so good, is that sometimes we're in an environment where we are kind of, like a duck out of water. We're just the outsider. We feel that way, and our pain, our wounding,
Yeah.
sometimes trauma makes us feel like I'm getting rejected. Maybe in certain cases you are being rejected because people don't, they're like, oh, you're not like the rest of us. And it might be that you're in an industry or you're a department in your organization where there could be like a predominance of one gift. And that ends up being that department's culture. And I had this with a friend of mine. I think that's what, Dana, you're remembering. We were
Yes.
chatting. She was a strong relational person, and she was working in a department with all engineers, and just naturally in the tech industry, that department would have a predominance of gift to profit and teacher, which she did not have in her top three. And she's like, why did they hire me? This is kind of stressful. I'm greeting people, they don't talk, different things. And so then one of the things that's really interesting when you look at a situation like that, you start to see this is why the organization hired you. They needed a
Right.
strong verbalizer to offset the culture. So sometimes you get hired, sometimes you get placed for a season, and you're like, there's nobody with my design here. But if you don't interpret it through design, through your contribution, without allowing the pressure of the local culture to change you, then it's so easy to feel a lot of doubt about who you are. And then you can many of us choose one of two options. We choose to try to become like those gifts, which is not sustainable for us
Right.
long term.
Right.
Or we end up feeling like we leave that organization, we feel we've left as a failure because we're like, okay, I didn't do well there. And the answer to that question is, did you not do well? With another question,
That's
why?
good.
Because there's an aspect that you probably were exactly what they needed in that season. They needed somebody who had the relational pulse. And even though that department may not have had that culture, they still needed you. And we've seen this in other organizations and missionary organizations and different global ministries we've done, where we've had a large group of people who are feelers, and some of these gifts are strong feelers, and they know the pain of an audience. They want to take, resources and water supplies to Indigenous people and people stuck in poverty, and they are very passionate about the pain of that. And then you always need a couple people with a strong gift to profit. And they're going to tell you, here's how much money we have. And here's how much money we don't have. So I know you want to help everybody, but you're really going to only help 3% of this city. And that's going to be a win because that's what you can afford, And so sometimes that individual who has to communicate that message, they're like, oh, I feel like everybody here feels I'm just, not the compassionate one, or I'm just not worried about what they're worried about. But actually, they are exactly what that group needs in that moment in time to go. You may feel you want to help everyone, but you're only going to help 3%. And the key is not seeing that as failure. It's seeing it as what you have today, because God is our daily bread. So
Right.
those are some of kind of the more positive twists that I think Dana and I were talking about, where it depends what narrative you read that in. If you read it on like, oh, I'm the outsider, I don't fit in, or worse yet, if you have somebody in that group who doesn't get you, and they're like, oh, I feel like you're just so out of sync. And then they verbalize how different you are as a negative. That becomes very confusing if you don't know your design. Because then how do you reply to that? You're like, yeah, I
Yeah,
am. Part of you agrees, yes, I'm different and I can't change who I am, or I can for a short spurt, but I can't live there. And so that's where this ends up giving a shared language. And people don't have to know the gifts for you to have a shared language. You can introduce it. You can start to advocate better for yourself. And that's what I think the hope in transformation leadership is that I've seen this taught through the years over the last 25 years. And some people are like, everybody has to know it to play by the game, by the rules of the game. But actually, you don't have to.
mhm,
If you understand it, it will give you the language to advocate better for yourself, to negotiate, to
absolutely.
help those around you. And I think, Dana, you witnessed that firsthand of what could
Yes.
happen even across cultural lines, economic demographics. And I know we've chatted about that. I don't know if you want to kind of comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how much I loved working for you because we could dialogue around that. Like projects weren't just about the projects we were doing, and we were doing so many like fast-paced things across the world, but we could talk about it also in the aspect of how does design fit in and how can design, and you created a team that understood each other's design. So not only were we able to advocate for our own design, which I mean, you understood so well. So we didn't have to, but we knew how to. We needed to. But we could look at our coworker and kind of preemptively say, okay, you know what, that person has that gift. My gift can be a little faster than that gift in a fast-paced environment. So let me just we understood how to honor each other so we could just love each other the best. And so I wanted to actually, and there was another thing while you were talking that came to mind. One thing that I also heard at Toe was the aspect that a lot of times one of these gifts can be traumatized, and often in childhood. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where you could be in an environment where you're different than those in the surrounding environment, and that can cause a trauma. But when you understand that and you understand the gifts the way you teach them, you actually have the tools to heal from that. And when your gift is healed, you're able to reach your destiny. So that is just so valuable. But given that we have so many leaders of organizations and it's life-giving leaders, I wanted to just, in all what you shared, you go into organizations and churches and you do this for their teams, what you did for us as a team, which was invaluable, the most beautiful, healthy work environment. Like, I feel like I'm going to tear up, so I'm going to stop talking, but about that. But no, really, really, and you do that for teams. And it's so much deeper than what we're even talking about, because you have this other level of even being able to identify the gift on an organization, which we won't be able to get into today, but just for those curious, I want to get you more curious because this is good stuff, right? But tell me about the work you do with organizations and how that kind of plays out to really be transformational, because it is something I strongly believe every organization needs.
Yes. So, like Dana's saying, every organization has one of these seven gifts. And that sometimes can be a little bit harder for you to identify. And you might say, like, okay, well, so we'll do a deep dive maybe in the future on that one. But one of the way this helps you is if you know the organization you're going into has a strong gift of mercy. Let's say, for example, we know that this organization values feeling deeply. This is an organization that can operate with an intuitive sense because it feels right at the leadership level. And so if you don't have that gift, you might come in very judgmental. I don't know what direction we're going and I don't know how we got there, but and then that would can be the way that you actually make yourself less valuable in that organization, because now you are not able to see their design and you're not able to see how different your design is. And that's where it bridges the gap when you can start to identify that design. I know, Dana, I know you moved recently. I think you're still in Toronto, in the Toronto area,
We're
right?
actually in Niagara Falls currently.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Okay. So
Yes.
that's, so I know like we've talked about regions. Regions of the world have gifts as
That's right.
well. And so I am located in California. This is a very strong exhorter state.
Yes.
And then previously Dana was in the Toronto area, and that's a very strong gift of profits, area and land mass where it's going to have different sets of criteria. And so the organizations are going to have their individual design, but you're going to have a local culture that's different. And when you look at California, you have a local culture that is relationally based. It's like, oh, isn't this person so interesting? Or, isn't it neat that there's this or that? It makes sense that Hollywood's here because it's building off personalities, right? It's building
Right.
off relational things. But then you could go somewhere like the Toronto area, and it really, their core value is going to be about what's right, what's wrong, what's messed up with our organization or the nation. And they're going to talk very differently.
Right.
And so that's kind of one of the ways that what Dana's touching on when you realize like, oh, our local culture is this, or our organizational culture is this. This is some of the ways that you can translate and talk the local language. It makes you, we talk about being bicultural. This is like being bicultural for people's design or the designs of people group. And that way you come in, you honor yourself and you honor the organization or the culture you're entering into by going, I can sit back and I can just joyfully celebrate this without feeling threatened or without feeling like because it's different, it's wrong. And so most of us intellectually understand that, but a lot of times it's like, how do you do that?
Right,
So.
right. So amazing. Thank you so much, Evelyn. That was so awesome. So I've just put evelynsilvosowallace.com in the YouTube. I will also put it in our Zoom room, but you guys are going to get a chance to ask all your questions and all of that when we shift over to the Zoom room in 4 minutes. But Evelyn, in that time, I'd love for you to share what is this work, you do it with individuals, you do it with couples, you do it with families, you do it with companies. And I actually think it's really essential at all levels, but I think what it does in every level is incredible. But I also think this is such a key to make companies transformational in this upcoming season that we're coming in, where there are so many companies that are shifting succession and stuff in the next little while. And this is so necessary in that change of culture. So could you share with us what what are your actual services? What people want to reach out to you? How are they gonna receive all this goodness?
Well, I have a contact form on the website that Dana just mentioned. You can reach out to me and say, like, I'm interested for myself. Like, I want to set up a coaching session to know what my top 3 gifts are or to rediscover them because you might feel like I I feel like I was this way when I was a kid. Now I've learned to be this way as an adult. Which one am I really? And so it ends up being really great for individuals. It's also really good for families as well. It's amazing how it can be
It really is.
so easy to discover kids' gifts from age 0 to 4. It seems too small, but it's about design. It's not about your environment. So that ends up being really great. And one of the areas I'm passionate about is the workforce, like Dana mentioned, and helping people realize what's our organization's gifts, what's my gifts inside this organization, because we spend so much time there and we depend so much in those environments. And we don't want to be there and be unhappy or to dread it, and it's like, how do we rediscover the joy in what we're good at doing or what we've learned to master being good at doing? And I really believe that knowing your design and knowing your company's design and your industry's design releases that joy back into you, because then you can start to build all these bridges. Or you can say, oh yeah, I came into this because I love this. And sometimes people will ask someone like, what are you passionate about? And they can't answer the question. And sometimes it's because we've learned to interpret that question by what am I required to be passionate about? But sometimes,
Wow, that's so
like
good.
when we reframe that by design, then we can find those anchors and we can say, oh, I'm always going to be passionate about these types of things. And the adaptation to these types of things could be huge. They could be so multifaceted. It's not like I have to say, I love the music industry. No, it could be like, I love helping people feel from their
Mm,
environment, and then that can multiply
mm.
into multiple areas. It doesn't just have to be so narrow, and it can help you find your anchors in an industry. If you're like, I'm not in music, but music really speaks to me. Why does, and it's probably because you have gift of mercy in your top three, or you have a gift of giver in your top three, and so you can rediscover it by these amazing principles that have been around for thousands of years, just literally undiscovered in the
Yeah.
Bible.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so for everyone, if you go to evelynsilvosowallace.com, there's also a free quiz you can do to know your gift. And then you can purchase the seminar to understand it deeply and know at your gift combination. And her coaching is phenomenal. I really highly recommend the test, even if you've done the motivational gift test before. Um, she was able to correct some things that the gift of giver often had evaded people in previous tests. And they admittedly said, I don't really understand this gift. So that's why it's evaded me. But Evelyn just has nailed it. So people with that gift who've never really felt they could understand themselves or understand this, just go, her tools are incredible. Again, it's in the YouTube there, and I'm going to put it in the Zoom once we move over to the Zoom. EvelynSilvosoWallace.com. Go in, do the quiz, find out what you are, purchase her seminars, go on to coaching. She's just a phenomenal, you are phenomenal. So I'm just going to end the live stream. We love you guys. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to jump into our Zoom room with our clients. If you'd like to become a client, go to hannahstrategy.com. You can purchase even just to get into the Zoom room on Life Giving Leaders, or whatever work, other things we can do with you, we would be happy. Have a wonderful day. God bless you. Bye. Okay, so we have ended